This time on Flickering Dreams, we review 6 films. 3 of them are out in cinemas at the moment. There's Fast X, the latest in the franchise, Sisu, a very violent Finland-set war movie, Hypnotic, a thriller starring Ben Affleck, and then on streaming services we have on Amazon a Hindi movie, Kafal, a jackfruit mystery, and Maybe I Do, and on Netflix a French language film called The Five Devils. Also, in the start of a new feature, the team look at their favourite films from particular directors, and where better place to start than with Steven Spielberg. This is Flickering Dreams. Right, so we have a packed agenda here again on Flickering Dreams this week. And we're going to start with a film that is currently headlining in cinemas. It's the 10th in the seemingly endless Fast and Furious series called Fast X. They have promised that this is the last of 2 films being created, but we'll see. I thought that this title was originally going to be called Fast 10... your seatbelt, which would have been a much funnier title and a much better title, I think. But no, they've come out with Fast X. How dull. So in Fast X, Dom and his extended family are being pursued in an act of revenge by Dante Reyes, who holds Dom responsible for his father's death, which was actually an action scene in Fast 5 many, many years ago. Now, 10 years later, the sociopath Dante wants to exact pain on Dom by progressively bumping off each member of his family, with particular attention being paid to his son Brian. Here's a clip.
You remember my father? Hernan Reyes. My father was a horrible man. Very bad daddy. But I kind of liked him, and you took him from me when you stole our money and left us with nothing but suffering.
That's what I came here for. To end that suffering.
Right, we'll start off this by passing it over to Scott. Scott, what did you make of Fast 10?
So I had a blast with this one. Straight off the bat, I've got to say, throughout this franchise, I've been a fan. I think in the early films were, I was going to say more realistic, but barely. But a little bit more grounded. Until we got to Fast 5 and onwards, it's basically been just full-on action blockbuster cartoon, pretty much. And for me, the last couple have been off the boil a wee bit. They've went maybe a bit too much in the fan service side, and I think this one goes back to just being pure entertainment. So, yeah, as expected, action scenes galore. You've got the chases, the fights, there's explosions everywhere. There's a particular action scene that I imagine Andy will be happy with, given its connection to one of his favourite films, except with more cars and explosions. The cast, they know exactly the type of movie they're in. Their tongues are all firmly in their cheeks, and they're having just the most amount of fun, particularly Jason Momoa, who is exuding such Joker energy. And he's just having the most fun being a villain, but really camp as well. But when you're Jason Momoa, you can do what you want.
He must be the campest villain we've had in something like this since the 2 guys in Diamonds Are Forever, I think. I mean, he absolutely goes over the top. It's just a flamboyance that I really, really liked. There's a bizarre scene where he's painting the nails of dead people sat in deck chairs. No idea where that was supposed to fit in. There are so many random scenes in this, aren't there?
But that's the thing. I think they're just having fun. And I think in them having fun, we're having fun as well. So I've said in my review that this is my 3rd favourite film in the Fast franchise after 7 and 5. And I think it is because you can just enjoy the absolute nonsense, but in an entertaining way. Try not to take it seriously at all. Don't look for any logic. If you try and pick things apart or any sort of continuity errors, you're just not going to have a good time. You're not going to enjoy that. So what I'd say is just, I don't like the phrase switch your mind off, but it's that kind of film where You just have to enjoy it for what it is. And I'd also say that anyone that gets to the end of the film, you should stick around a little bit because there is a mid-credit scene as well. And you mentioned 2, Bob, but I've heard recently that actually there are going to be 3 films in this last part instead of 2.
Save me.
Just to extend it even longer. I know.
Very good. Okay.
But yeah.
Emma, what did you make of that? Do you agree with Scott?
I did really enjoy myself as well at it. Like to say, you can't take it seriously. I mean, they went to space in the last one in a car. So I was hoping for something even more bizarre than that to happen in this. I was hoping maybe Mecha Godzilla car, but no, just regular cars. But honestly, like, I got to the end of the film, I was like, wait, that's the end of this film? I was like so caught up in it because it was just having ridiculous fun that I didn't even realise like I'd spent that long in the cinema. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And it does, like, my favourite is Fast 5, so I rewatched that one before I went and saw this so I could get the full enjoyment. The only thing, and I know, I love Jason Momoa and he definitely had fun doing this role, and this is probably just me because I spoke to other people after coming out and they don't agree with me. But I found it really difficult to deal with his personality change and the way they sort of blamed it on that accident in Fast 5. And I was just like, the connotations of that and the way he now was, I don't know. It just set me off the wrong way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I might be the odd one out here, although we haven't heard your view yet, Bob. I went in expecting outrageous stunts, expecting outrageous action, expecting fights and chases, and we got all that, and that was fine. But it didn't deliver for me anything new in the genre. It didn't bring anything that I didn't feel I'd seen before. So I was kind of a bit meh about this. And you talk about Jason Momoa. He delivered every line as if it was being filmed for the trailer. You just thought he's filming the trailer with every single line that he utters. So I was a little bit meh about it. I was a little bit. I didn't enjoy it as much as I probably could have or should have because I knew what to expect. They didn't spring any new surprises on me in this one. Going to space in the last one, you kind of thought, yeah, hang on a second, wow. There was no real wow moment in the sense of this is a stunt, this is something new, this is something exciting that I haven't seen before. So I was a little bit more ambiguous about it than you guys, going in knowing what to expect, got what I expected, but I would have liked at least something that I didn't expect to happen. So, yeah, not quite on the same level as you guys.
I mean, you all know my feelings about unrealistic action in films. We have spoken about it before, and we will be speaking about it again before the end of this podcast as well. And this was overblown nonsense from beginning to end. I mean, there was hardly a plot to be had here, just a set of ludicrous action pieces strung together by a nonsensical plot points that didn't make any sense. I mean, what had Dante been doing for the 10 years between his father dying and now?
Yeah,
right?
That didn't really seem like the sort of person that would wait 10 years to do.
Was he in prison or something? There was no explanation for that at all. And then, as I think I read in your review, Andy, Dom must have been killed like 3 or 4 times, reversing out of a flying plane at one point, dragging 2 crashed helicopters behind his car and using them like some sort of, what those things the gauchos wave around it, right, crashing into a crane so the concrete block knocks this ludicrous bomb. I mean, the whole thing was just like turned to 12, which, to be honest, Fast 9 turned it to 13 with the space thing, which got me completely. I mean, ludicrous, right? Not even Elon Musk sends a sports car into space. Oh, hang on a minute. Yes, he does. So it was ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. But I did find myself enjoying this one, I have to say. Right? Against all the odds, I did actually have a good time with this one in the cinema. As you say, the cast is just crazy. There are so many names in this franchise now that every so often a new one, like Daniela Melchior, who we've talked about from Marlowe as being terrible in that, but great in the Suicide Squad, right? She crops up again. She's a name that keeps on cropping up. She plays the sister in Brazil who gets caught up in the action. So she's in the plot now. So occasionally we get new additional names dropped into here. And you got Brie Larson coming in, who I thought was really good and quite refreshing in this. I quite liked her being in this. So it was great. On the downside, the sound design I thought was awful, right? The mix of the dialogue and the music and the sound effects meant that a lot of the dialogue I really didn't pick up. I mean, Van Diesel talks like this. And he sounds like Jason Statham there, right? But Van Diesel talks like down here. He's hard enough to believe. He might as well have been saying, I am Groot for most of this film. The amount that you could actually pick up what he was actually saying. And given that they spent $340 million making this film, the special effects, I thought, were really dodgy. Like, there's a scene in Rome
it all
with
goes on the acting.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's all I think of is after that enormous cast had been paid, right? There was no money left for special effects because there's a scene in here with this bomb rolling through Rome, which is on fire, and the fire effects. In fact, throughout the film, I thought the pyro effects were really, really dodgy and bad. I don't know who they got to do them, but they should go to the back of the class and clean the erasers, right? So,
I'd love to know how much Helen Mirren got for her 2 minutes.
Yeah. Or indeed some other names that crop up in this film, which we won't spoil. So, yeah, I thought it was really ludicrous, overlong as well at 2 hours, 20 minutes, but then that's par for the course for these films. But I went and gave this one a 7 out of 10 because I did actually enjoy myself. I think it's a proper summer popcorn blockbuster. Scott, what did you give this?
I gave this one a 9.
9. Andy?
A 6 from me. Sorry, but 6.
6. Emma?
We're all different. I gave it an 8.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, you see, we're round about a hit, right? I'll do the maths later, but yeah, I think that's good. But it's certainly worth seeing on the big screen. I think this won't come across as well on the small screen. So, people, get out to your cinemas and go support your local cinema. The next film we're moving on to, it's Sisu, which is a Finnish produced film, but in English, so you don't have to suffer many subtitles in here. Now, Sisu, it claims in an opening title, is a Finnish word without really translatable meaning. It means kind of having courage, resilience, determination, and inner strength. And it's actually, I read, named after the Finnish word for guts. So basically having guts. And there are an awful lot of guts available in this film because this is a ludicrously gory film right from the get-go, and it just ramps up from there on. The film at one point gives a whole new meaning to the term aqualung. And Sisu, in the context of this film, is applied to a rugged gold digger called Artami, played by Jorma Tormilla. And it's 1944 in the film, and the ex-Finnish SAS legend, who is Artami, has just had enough of World War II, and he's off by himself prospecting in the wilds of Finland when he discovers a huge vein of gold. Unfortunately, as he returns to the bank to cash in his find, he is hampered when he runs into a rogue German column with a commander who's looking to end his war in profit. But the wild force of nature, that is Artami, is not going to give up his gold without a fight. Here's a clip.
He was a Finnish commander, lost his home and his family in the war. He became a one-man death squad. He's one mean motherfucker that you do not want to mess with.
So, Andy, I think you're a fan of this film, so we'll start with you on this one, if we may.
Yeah, having just said what we said about Fast X and the fact that Vin Diesel should have died even before he got through Fast 1, actually, I'm going to say that I really enjoyed this. Right from the beginning, it was clear to me with the use of font, it was clear that we were being asked to watch a comic book being brought to life. And once I could accept that, once I got my head around this is comic book, I could accept the fact that our hero seems to survive literally everything the German army can throw at him, except a nuclear bomb. It references every action film you can think of. Particularly, I think there was a lot of Nobody in there. There was a bit of Die Hard. There was a bit of Raiders of the Lost Ark. There was a bit of, you name it, an action film, and it's referenced in this. So some of the fun that for me was saying, okay, that's from that, and that's from that, and this is from Nobody, and that's from Raiders, and so on. And at 91 minutes, as opposed to you just said Fast X over 2 hours, it didn't outstay its welcome. This is the one that I really did have fun with. But it's accepting the fact that I'm watching a comic book being brought to life. Therefore, the guy can survive being dropped out of a plane or a plane landing on him or whatever, because we're told right from the beginning that that's going to be the kind of film it is. So I just had great fun. I thought 91 minutes whizzed by. Lots of action, lots of stunts, lots of gore. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
It was very, very Quentin Tarantino-esque in its gore, wasn't it? Down to the titles, because when the titles came up, the chapters, I thought, okay, this is Tarantino, and it reminded me a lot of Inglourious Bastards.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of that. But as I say, you name an action film, you name it, it's in there. John Wick, yeah, exactly. So they're all shoved into this 91 minutes that it feels like a very crammed pie that just bursts open, and splatters you in the face.
Literally.
I just enjoyed the heck out of it.
Emma, did you see it as well?
Yeah, I did. Very much the same. I really enjoyed it as well. I wasn't exactly sure what I was expecting when I went in. There was a lot more action than I had thought it was going to be. There was literally one scene where I was like, I absolutely did not need to see that. And
Did it involve an animal?
It did involve an animal.
Yes.
I thought it might.
And no, that set me right off. But the rest of it was amazing.
Yes.
It's kind of like a World War II spaghetti western movie. It's as if Sergio Leone was directing a World War II movie with Ennio Morricone doing the score.
Yes.
And the score was terrific.
Yeah.
I really expected to see those two names on the credits at the end.
Yes, I think so. But I agree with your point, Emma, about this is yet another one, possibly not for animal lovers. We talked about one last week, didn't we? The Northern Ireland SAS one. And there is a dog put in significant danger in this one, and also a horse who is put in more than a little danger. And so some viewers are triggered by animal issues, and this is maybe not the film for them either. I came out of this film really quite grumpy because I was, again, irritated by the unrealism of it. I say that based on the fact that I thought this was a really good war movie of the likes of Raiders of the Lost Ark type of action adventure against the Nazis, but I couldn't get behind some of the plot points in here along the lines that you were saying, Andy, about our hero being indestructible. And I can't really say specifics. I've put some at the bottom of my review on One Man's Movies for this, which I posted today. But there are things that happen in this movie which destroyed my credibility in the film. Yes, I'm okay with cartoon type films, but I like them to be based in some sort of reality or unreality, one or the other. And there was a choice here the filmmakers could have taken, I think. One was to make our hero a man, in which case he could get beaten up and bloodied and shot up and all those things, but then he should be able to react in that sense and not be pushed to the point where you thought, well, that guy's going to be dead. Or, alternatively, there could have been some magical shimmering mist that came out of a rock in the middle of nowhere that suddenly kind of coalesced like some strange Finnish sprite into the figure of this man who takes it upon himself to rescue these girls from the Nazis. And that's the aspect of the film, but it's kind of a supernatural thing, and he can't die for that reason because he just reemerges as a shimmering thing and makes the man again, or something. But the fact it didn't sit either on those, that really annoyed the hell out of me, I'm afraid. I wanted that. I either wanted him to be a man or I wanted him to be a Marvel superhero that you knew isn't going to die, right? He could have been Captain Marvel, right? And you knew he wasn't going to die, whatever was thrown at him. As it was, it kind of fell between those two stills for me. But there was lots of good stuff in the film, and I think I was overly harsh when I came out of this film because I was annoyed at it for that reason. There's some great, memorable visual moments, I thought, in here. The cinematographer was Kjell Langerus, and there are some great visual scenes, like the sight of the two bitches, as they're called, the captured Finnish sex slaves walking in front of the tank across a minefield. Like, their minds went off. Right. Why not? Okay, enough. Some of those visual images on a widescreen basis I thought were absolutely superb. But I upped my initial rating when I came out. I actually gave this one a 7 in the end. I was lower than that when I came out of the film. But thinking about it, I wouldn't mind going to see it again and maybe have more of a fun time with it. Andy?
I gave it an 8.
An 8?
I was really interested that on Rotten Tomatoes it got 95% out of 129 critics. And the Roger Ebert website said it was outlandishly entertaining. And I have to agree.
Yeah.
So, 8, possibly 8.5 from me. Yep.
Okay. And Emma?
Yeah, it's an 8 from me as well. And surprisingly, my local Cineworld actually has some screenings of it this week, so I'm going to go and see it again.
Yeah. Scott, that's one for your list, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
Next up, we are looking at another new film that is out, and that is a new Ben Affleck movie called Hypnotic. Emma, you've seen Hypnotic in preview. Do you want to introduce it to us?
Yeah, sure. So, Hypnotic is a mystery thriller with Ben Affleck and Alice Braga, directed by Robert Rodriguez. Affleck plays Danny Rourke, who has been reeling since the abduction of his daughter. Following that, his wife has left him, and the only thing he's really got left is his job as a detective in the Austin PD. His first case back with partner Nix, they are tipped off about a robbery of some safety deposit boxes, so they do some surveillance on that and find a very mysterious man who is seemingly giving instructions to strangers and police officers, and they're just following his instructions without question. Rourke's instincts kick in. He decides to go and investigate the safety deposit boxes, and in the one that was in the tip-off, he finds a picture of his missing daughter, and from there he basically has to work out what this strange man has to do with his daughter's abduction and how he can possibly get her back. And here's a clip.
Are you familiar with the concept of hypnotics?
Hypnotics.
Hypnotics have the ability to influence the brain, sound, voice,
Any light?
locking eyes. Hypnotics use them to make you see a version of the world that doesn't exist.
So what did you make of Hypnotic, Emma?
So I really enjoyed it. I do enjoy some random thrillers when they pop up, and I'd not heard about this one until the Unlimited screening sort of really was starting to be advertised. I really liked the twists in it. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out from the trailer, because if you watch that, it just makes it seem like a thriller. You don't quite get any of the hints about what is going to happen within the film, which I really like, because sometimes they will allude to that and inevitably spoil something that's coming. Ben Affleck I thought was very good. The gentleman whose name I have completely forgotten, who plays a guy who's giving the suggestions to people, I really enjoyed. He does quite a good evil person in films. I quite like his acting in various things. And I really enjoyed the way they brought out what was hidden from the trailer. So bringing all that hypnotic stuff out and how it led to the conclusion. I thought that was really good. Coming out of it though, the only thing I had an issue with is that actually following that reveal, there are things that happen earlier in the film that then don't line up with that plot point, which if you don't think too much about it, you wouldn't notice it. It was just because I was having a discussion with someone when I came out of the cinema. But I think it's definitely worth a watch. I don't know that it necessarily has to be at the cinema, but that's always the best way to see a film.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Marked out of 10?
I'm getting very predictable. It's going to be an 8
8?
for this one as well.
Okay. I do find Ben Affleck's films a bit hit and miss, but when he does a good thriller, I think he is very good in them. Yeah. Okay. All right, so that's an 8 for Hypnotic. So we're moving on now to a bit of a random film on Netflix, I believe, which is Carfal, a jackfruit mystery, which sounds an unlikely title for a film, but Scott, you've seen this, and perhaps you can introduce it.
Yeah, so this is a random one that I saw pop up on Netflix, as you say there. And it is a comedy mystery which involves a young female police inspector who, following a major success, is then assigned to lead an investigation into a politician who, from his garden, has disappeared a couple of very big jackfruits. Here's a clip.
वारदात कहाँ हुई है सर? 2 चमचमाते शानदार कटहल चोरी है गए।
सर ऐसे तो मुश्किल हो जाएगी। कल को लोग कुमड़ा लौकी तो रहेगी रिपोर्ट लिखवाने आ जाएंगे।
This looks a somewhat random one. What country is this from? Is this a Tamil thing?
So this is in Hindi, this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is a bit of a silly movie, as I'm sure you've already come to expect. But something that you won't hear from me very often, I actually wanted it to be even sillier. The comedy in this was fine in places. There are some characters in the supporting cast that did make me chuckle a little bit here and there. But the thing that was probably most interesting for me is when it went into the theme of class. And essentially our lead character is involved in a romantic relationship with a constable who she works with. Now, in terms of the cast, sort of class levels, he is from a higher class, she is from a lower class. However, she has a higher rank within the police force. And so there's a bit of an interesting dynamic going on there where people are not sure really who should be thought of higher. Is it the person that comes from the higher class background, or is it the person that has the higher rank within the police force? And so that's quite an interesting dynamic that they explore there. But yeah, in terms of the actual main plot itself, it's quite slapstick, but could have been even more slapstick given the ridiculousness of the main plot itself.
If you had to compare it with a similar film from Western cinema, what would you say?
Yeah, so I think tonally it's got a bit of a See How They Run vibe to it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The film from, I think, was it the end of last year, earlier this year, with Sam Rockwell and Saoirse Ronan? Because you essentially got this sort of straight man character with the lead here who's surrounded by people that she just thinks is incompetent, and most of the time they actually are. So in terms of my rating, I gave this a 6. It's one that I wouldn't say you need to rush out to see.
All right. That makes it a miss in our book, but there you go. Next up, there's a film which I've seen, and don't think any of you guys have seen it. It's new on Amazon at the moment, and that's called Maybe I Do. Maybe I Do sees two characters, Michelle and Alan, played by Emma Roberts, Julia Roberts' niece, and Luke Bracey, in a relationship and struggling with the commitment of marriage. On the other side of the coin, there is married Howard, played by Richard Gere, having an affair with the married Monica, played by Susan Sarandon, and also another couple, the married Sam, played by William H. Macy, who's having an affair with the married Grace, played by Diane Keaton. Now, with these three dramatic streams in play, how will they all coalesce? Here's a spoiler-free clip.
They're really doing this? She's throwing it to Michelle. Michelle catches the flowers. You get married next. Your life's all set.
I grew up wondering if I would be able to stand in front of someone and promise her the rest of my life. And here we are.
It was a reflex action.
It was the most awful moment in the whole history of women being stuck with you idiots.
So, in terms of having different streams of dramatic action at the start of the film, this is a little bit like the Oscar Isaac film Life itself. But unfortunately, unlike that film, which I quite enjoyed, even with this heavyweight set of actors on the team, and I was really surprised when I kind of saw the cast list for this film, this kind of just stumbles along with a stodgy script, and it just feels quite dispiriting and sad, I thought. The fact that you have a film focused on these couples having extramarital affairs. I mean, I've been married for over 40 years, and I can't associate with either of these struggling couples. That being said, there is some nice dialogue between the couples towards the end of the film about the importance of communication in marriage. But there is such a lot of coincidence in this film that it's very difficult to really get behind it and enjoy it, I'm afraid. I guess one other plus about the film is, there are two pluses actually. One is that it's blissfully short at just over 90 minutes. The second is that Diane Keaton in this film is far better and far less gurney, if that's a word, than she was in Book Club, The Next Chapter. And I had such a rant at Diane Keaton last week for her role in Book Club that I think I ought to make amends and say at least she's a lot better and she delivers a much better performance in this film. Even with that said, I can't really recommend this film as one for you to go and watch. I gave this one a 5 out of 10. It's good to see these actors at work, and William H. Macy is particularly good, I thought. But no, script didn't do it for me, I'm afraid. So our final film we're looking at today is called The Five Devils.
Tu sens quoi?
Pas grand-chose.
Le champignon. Et puis il y a aussi l'odeur de l'animal qui l'a mangé.
Ferme les yeux.
Un carnet qui sent la piscine. Et aussi un peu le café.
Andy, you have seen. Must be good. It's got devils in the title, so it's your specialist subject.
Not necessarily. Yeah, this was a sort of fairly random choice. It's new on Amazon. This is a French fantasy drama. It stars Sally Dram as a solitary child who has got a magical gift. She can smell and reproduce any scent of her choosing. Okay, now you have to stay with it, okay? And she collects these scents in different jars, which she labels. So she's got a jar labelled mum. And when you open the jar, that jar smells of mum. Something else, dad, and so on, auntie, okay? But then it takes a really interesting turn because she's living quite a happy life. She's a lovely, well-adjusted child. But suddenly Auntie Vicky turns up, and Auntie Vicky's been in prison. And it turns out that by mixing smell, complicated, but by mixing the aromas of these two people together, she discovers her mum and Auntie Vicky actually had a relationship before mum married her dad. And this kind of brings devastation into her life. It also affects her relationships with other children as well. In school, this ability to smell whether they reek or whether they're pleasant or whether they're going to be nice or whether she wants to get to know them. At its heart, it's a family relationship about a young girl discovering secrets of her mum's past. I actually thought, as daft as it sounds, and it is a fantasy drama, but I actually thought it was quite compelling. I really enjoyed it. French with subtitles on Amazon, Five Devils. It got a very good response at Cannes last year, which, take that or leave that. But it's a really interesting family drama with fantasy, a bit of fantasy thrown in.
You had us all pulling most strange faces there.
I was pulling crazy faces when I was reading the description of what I was about to watch. At times I was pulling faces when I was watching it. But basically, this young girl identifies whether people are good or bad by the way they smell, which she can capture in a jar. She then discovers Auntie Vicky, who's just turned up, had a relationship with her mum, which throws her world into total confusion.
Rating out of 10?
7.
7 out of 10, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like one to watch. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so those are the 6 films we've looked at this week. We are going to close on our AOB with a new feature where we're just going to have a general group discussion about a topic and our favourite particular film of a particular director. And let's start with one of the most prolific directors this week, and that is Steven Spielberg. So I think I could probably predict what you're going to pick, Andy Godfrey, for this film, but let me see if I'm correct. What is your favourite Spielberg film and why?
Not just in my opinion, my favourite Spielberg film, the greatest movie ever made, Raiders of the Lost Ark. A big surprise to everybody. Just to tell you that the first time I saw Raiders, it was a sad circumstances. My family and I were on holiday in Cornwall. My dad received word that his best friend and colleague had passed away, and the funeral was happening while we were on holiday in Devon. I was a teenager at the time. Mum and Dad left me and my brother on our own. My brother's girlfriend came down. Sorry, little me. went off on his own to the cinema. I'd heard about this film called Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was the first week it was out. In my naivety, I thought it was something to do with Noah's Ark. And I'd only ever seen pictures of Harrison Ford and Karen Allen tied to a big pole. So I didn't have a clue. I went and saw it. And you know the evening sequence where he's been chased by the boulders and he's been chased by the guys and the plane flies away into the distance. At that point, this is absolutely true, I got up to walk out thinking, wow, I've just seen a great movie. Because that whole opening sequence is so tight, it's so encompassed, it feels like you've seen a film from beginning to end with them flying off into the distance. I actually got up and walked out thinking that was brilliant. Hang on a minute, it's still going. And then it got better and better and better. And I think arguably the sword swinging guy getting shot is the funniest moment ever in the history of cinema, arguably. We all know the story behind that. There was sickness on the set. Why don't I just shoot the bastard? To me, it's got a bit of everything I like in a film. It's got romance, science fiction, action, adventure, great hero, special effects, great dialogue. I love it to this day. I've had the privilege of meeting Karen Allen, and I told her how much I loved it. I've spoken to John Rhys-Davies. I interviewed him a few years ago, and down the phone, I told him Raiders was my favourite film of all time. And down the phone, he just went, it's very dangerous. You go first. And having him on the other end of the phone saying that, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. You know?
Marvellous.
It was incredible. So, yeah, I mean, I love Spielberg. Close Encounters is also in my top 10 of all time, but Raiders is my favourite film of all time.
Yeah, good. Now, you see, I thought you might be going to say Jaws there, but I wasn't correct. But Raiders, yeah, I can get behind that one. Let's move to the younger audience here. Emma, what's your favourite Spielberg film?
This became something of a five-way tie at one point, because I was like, oh, it's absolutely this film. And I was like, I'm just going to look at his filmography just to make sure. I was like, oh, but there's that film. And I've forgotten about that film. And I did get down to 2, and I'm still trying to decide. I'm going to make an impulse decision. Jurassic Park.
Come on, we gotta get out of here. Gotta get out of here.
The only thing that matters now are the people who left.
I mean, I love a creature feature anyway. Everything about this film brings me joy when I see it. It was so much fun. I remember seeing it when I was younger, and absolutely I love the practical effects side of it. So that always appeals to me in films. I think, there's just some iconic moments that I use those GIFs all the time. To friends, always things from the original Jurassic Park. I mean, the theme song, to everything. I don't think it's got a single bit wrong with it, apart from, obviously, it could have done with more Samuel L. Jackson.
Good choice, a classic. Okay, we've had Raiders, we've had Jurassic Park. Scott.
So, this is awkward. Emma's stolen my answer. I would also pick Jurassic Park.
Okay. You are of the age where that would have made a big impact on you at that age, yeah?
Well, the thing is, as we mentioned in a previous podcast when I was talking about my favourite trailer, and I picked The Lost World Jurassic Park, I had mentioned that I'd actually seen that film before I'd seen the first Jurassic Park, and I'd only seen that years later on TV, as opposed to when it first came out. And yeah, as Emma said, the practical effects are incredible. I think the acting, it's such a great cast, iconic. They've obviously came back a few times because of how iconic they are. The music is phenomenal. But I mean, the John Williams-Steven Spielberg partnership, I mean, I couldn't even count how many films they've been amazing together. I think, yeah, as a kid, dinosaurs, they're cool, right? And this one just had everything for me from that side of it. So yeah, I'd have to pick Jurassic Park as well. It's in my top 5 of all time.
Yeah.
Can I just say you're making me feel so old? Because I saw
Sorry, Andy.
I saw Jurassic Park the day it came out.
Yeah, yes indeed. Yeah, those are all really great choices. I'm afraid you're all wrong though. That's your right to be wrong. I think the best Spielberg film is one that you just mentioned, Andy, and that's Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
We recently had a close encounter with something very unusual. Who are you people?
From 1977, I saw this when it came out when I was 16 years old. Can you imagine such a thing? And I watched the skies. Every night I was out in the garden watching the skies for alien life. It had such a massive effect on me, that film. I must have gone to the cinema to see it a dozen times, probably, in the first few weeks of it opening. I thought the structure of it was so beautiful. John Williams' music, the final scenes of the film where the spaceship takes off, I think that piece of music is a desert island piece of music for me, that I would take that to a desert island. Richard Dreyfuss, Melinda Dillon, Terry Garr, Carrie Guthrie as a little kid. I think it delivered superb performances. Francois Truffaut, the French director, as the guy who deserves to be there more than Mozambique, as the T-shirt said. I think it's just a fantastic film. Spielberg unfortunately came back and created the special edition, which was a terrible thing to do. Not because he did that totally unnecessary scene of Neri going inside the spaceship, but also because he cut out certain scenes. There's an absolutely pivotal scene at the beginning of the original cut where Neri is in a power plant where he worked as the electrical linesman, being told, you need to get out and fix these electrical lines because we've got blackouts everywhere. And it's an absolute key part of the plot, because later in the film he gets fired and you don't know why he's being fired. Why is he being fired? Just because he was driving in his truck and had this close encounter. The whole film kind of got chopped up and chewed up and spat out with new bits filmed, with the kids looking far older than they were in the original cut, etc., etc. Terrible idea. So I go back to the original theatrical cut. Yeah.
I was a couple of years ago. I was at a Mark Commode show in London, and Mark was interviewing Richard Dreyfuss. And afterwards, Mark introduced me to Richard Dreyfuss, and I got to chat to him for about 20 minutes. And I asked him about the special edition of Close Encounters, particularly where you go into the mothership. He said to me, "I begged Spielberg not to do that." He said, "I told him that this was the biggest mistake of his career, that he would regret it, that it was wrong." He said, "I begged Spielberg not to make me do it." But he was under a contract. And Richard Dreyfuss said to me, "I didn't want to do it. Worst thing Spielberg ever did was to change the ending of Close Encounters." So just so you know, Richard Dreyfuss filming that scene was very unhappy as well.
Yeah. So it was the Spielberg equivalent of painting a moustache on the Mona Lisa, I think. But for me, the original theatrical cut, Close Encounters, is a film very close to my heart. It's probably my number one film of all time, just because of that association I have. Right, so for Spielberg classics, we like you said, Emma, you could pick a whole load of different films.
Isn't it interesting that we've all gone for the more fantasy-orientated ones rather than the Schindler's List and the Saving Private Ryan and Amistad? Really, because you can divide Spielberg into two, can't you? The fantasy and the sort of more historical epic. Lincoln. Colour Purple. Yeah. And we've gone for the more fantasy-orientated ones because he's just so good at it.
yeah, indeed. Hook, why did you
I will have no bad words about Hook, Bob.
Oh, I love that. That was on my short list of
really
6.
Really, you surprised me with that. You really do, yeah.
West Side Story.
I will admit something though, that I haven't seen Close Encounters.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Get it on your list.
I will fix that. I promise.
Yeah, see the original version. Just see the original version, the first cut, not the special edition or the director's cut or anything. Now, tonight, right now. Brilliant.
Right. Okay, so that's our trip through Spielberg. Do we want to name a director for next week? We're going to do. How about Hitchcock? You've seen enough Hitchcock films?
Oh, yes. I'd love to do Hitchcock.
Yeah.
I've not seen a great deal, but I do have I already know my favourite.
Let's do Hitchcock then for next week. Okay.
He made 54, so you got 50. No, he made 53 for cinema, so you got 53 to choose from. I own 52 of them.
Which is the one that you're missing?
There was a 1929 silent film called The Eagle, which is lost. Nobody can find it.
Flickering Dreams listeners, if you've got a loft, go up in the loft.
This is the Hitchcock
one. Find a copy of The Eagle, yes.
By Alfred Hitchcock, yeah. But it's thought lost. I mean, the BFI have been searching for it for years.
Yeah.
and it's the only one of Hitchcock's films we don't have from the silent era.
Okay. So, so that's our Flickering Dreams. Just another couple of bits of any other business before we finish. Apart from those films that we already looked at, Hypnotic and Sisu, we have The Little Mermaid opening on Friday, which at the very least will be interesting. I have my own personal views about Disney recreating their animated films, but this one, I kind of got my fingers crossed that it will be half decent. The trailer looks half decent. And also on a Spielberg-related tack, Warner Brothers this week released a new trailer for The Colour Purple, which Scott and Andy will remember we talked about in our Oscar predictions. And I think, Scott, you listed it as one of your 10 shortlisted best films.
I did.
You didn't love me.
Afternoon. That means me a wife.
Even if we have to part, you and me, us have one heart.
And from the trailer, I have to say, I think I might agree with you. It does look a very strong and powerful piece of work. So you might want to look that up this week and check out the trailer for The Colour Purple. Any other bits of AOB from anybody else?
I managed to see Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, after everyone was raving about it. I was a bit disappointed in the beginning because I was a bit worried I wasn't quite hooked on it, but by the end I was bawling my eyes out just with joy. So, you know.
Good. And I think, Scott, you saw it as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw that on Monday as well, and yeah, I thought it was a very sweet film. I enjoyed it very much.
That's great. That's great. Good. Okay, that's our Flickering Dreams this week. Thank you to Scott Forbes from the Forbes Film and TV Review on Facebook, Andy Godfrey from Konnect Radio and Sorted Magazine, Emma Sewell from Emma at the Movies on Twitter and various other places, and myself, Bob Mann, from One Man's Movies and BBC Radio Solent. Thanks very much. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for listening to Flickering Dreams. Please subscribe to the podcast to get the latest edition delivered directly to your ears.